Spider-Man is amazing. It's one of the best Marvel movies out there, and it's easy to tell why it was so influential to the genre. There's a lot I want to say about this movie, so let's start from the very beginning. Spider-Man's origin is done very well in the movie. There's a lot of strong decisions that set up the tragic elements of his origin, and the progression of his character is done very well. A vital part of origin stories is to make our characters flawed. We need to be given a sense that they have a lot to learn, and a compelling reason for why they learned their lesson. From the start, they do a great job of establishing what Peter Parker wants. In his school life, he's often an outcast who only has his best friend to talk to. He gets antagonized by the bullies and gets jealous of their status and respect. Not only does this succeed in telling you what Peter Parker would seek if he were given a special gift, but it also justifies his temptations to be spiteful and snap back at those who try to put him down. It helps us get into the mind of Peter Parker and understand the decisions that he makes. Once Peter gets his powers, we see him struggle to get used to them, like any human would when given something new and extraordinary. As Peter gets used to them, the movie demonstrates a learning curve so that it becomes more rewarding and impactful when we see him officially become a superhero and take on more demanding challenges. As he discovers his powers, the movie does a good job of relating his use of them to his established wants. He wants to show off to MJ. He wants to get back at Flash and get satisfied by the respect he gains. He wants to lean further into that by making a brand out of his powers and using that to gain money and respect. While Peter is a good kid at heart, the negative progression of his character manages to show how power can be corrupting and the side effects of giving in to selfish temptations. And in order to overcome these flaws, Peter needed a figure to help him.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Uncle Ben is effectively utilized as a mentor figure for Peter Parker. The movie does the proper legwork to connect Peter and Ben's experiences so that Ben can reasonably relate to Peter.
You're changing. I know. I went through exactly the same thing at your age.
What's great about Ben's character is how he represents problems that never go away, and he sets a great example as to how Peter can work through these problems as he matures. While Peter experiences his own hardships, so does Ben. The first scene we see of him establishes that Ben was laid off in favor of corporate greed.
I'm already on my ass, mate. When the plant's senior electrician is laid off after 35 years, what else would you call it? The corporation is downsizing the people and upsizing their profits.
Ben, you'll get another job somewhere.
Well, May, I'm 68 years old. I'm too old for computers, and besides, I have a family to provide for.
Like Peter, Ben has to face harmful consequences brought by those in a position of power. This is going to be a never-ending issue so long as there are people who disregard the impact of their actions. Like Peter will come to experience over the years, Ben experiences self-doubt. He feels the pressure of having to provide for his family, especially as he grows in age in a world that's constantly evolving. It does a great job of demonstrating that responsibility isn't easy, even for him, and that's a challenge he always had to live through and one Peter will as well.
We've been down and out before, but somehow we survive.
The difference is that Ben doesn't give in to selfishness or spite. He uses his struggles to push him forward, which is something Peter will learn to do himself. Ben is already reflecting the ideals of Spider-Man, and that's really effective, because it makes sense of why Peter follows those ideals in the first place, and why he's capable of changing for the better.
These are the years when a man changes into the man he's going to become the rest of his life. Just be careful who you change into.
What's really great about Peter's change is that it's a product of Peter directly going against his uncle's ideals. Peter chose spitefulness over responsibility in the face of conflict. His decision mattered so much that it resulted in him losing his uncle, and that's really the perfect way to snap Peter out of his mindset. His selfishness and abuse of power started to affect him, as he lost someone he cared about, someone who tried to motivate him to act on something greater than his own pain and mishaps. It provides a compelling reason for Peter to change, and it only makes sense for Peter to honor his uncle by living up to his ideas. What's also really great is how Aunt May helps Peter get there at his lowest point. The shift in dynamic becomes more interesting because Peter was more connected to Ben than he was with May. Sure, he loved them like parents, but Ben felt like Peter's best friend, someone he was most comfortable with. There was always more distance between Peter and May, and now they both have to live with losing Ben, someone who inspired both of them to be better. Now all they have is each other, and throughout these movies, they help each other grow in their own unique ways. In this scene, May assures Peter that no matter how flawed he was, Ben knows he loved him and never doubted his destiny for greatness. The scene shows how May is inspired by Ben to become more influential to Peter and grow a closer relationship with him. And through May's encouragement, Peter builds his inner strength to become the hero that Ben would want him to become. Spider-Man is born, and he starts making a difference in the city. The movie does a great job of detailing his dual life now that he's a superhero. He now takes photos of himself to make money. He tries to make time for the people he cares about, alongside his personal commitments, even if Spider-Man takes a lot of time from that. But the rest of the movie really focuses on challenging Ben's ideals and raising the question of if it's even worth it. Green Goblin is really the first challenge to his belief system, as he represents a more cynical view on humanity. That in itself has a lot of interesting material to break down, but for Peter's side, the way Peter's beliefs are challenged is through the reward he gets for doing the right thing, or the lack thereof. Spider-Man does get support at first and realizes people believe in him, but this changes when Jameson starts to turn the city against him and even motivates the police to come after him. Spider-Man is still an anonymous vigilante, and that naturally raises distrust amongst those who want to ensure that he can be held accountable, or raises an opportunity for others to create conflict surrounding his name. It tests the idea if it's even worth it to stand by moral convictions if the response to that is constant punishment. But through Peter's experiences, not only does he pass the test by holding on to who he is, but he only strengthens his convictions. Throughout the movie, Peter still has his own selfish desires, some of which he has matured enough to know not to act on, but there's a level to which he's naive to the consequences that Spider-Man can bring, which is largely why his convictions are strengthened towards the end. Peter believes that he can use Spider-Man to push himself forward without compromising his morality. He tries to do just that to make money at the Bugle and to win over MJ, but he realizes that it's not that simple. The Bugle gets attacked because Spider-Man stood up to the Green Goblin, Aunt May gets attacked in order to get to Peter, MJ gets attacked to try destroying Peter's spirit. These experiences prove to Peter that he can still be naive in spite of what he has learned. His life brings more consequences than he was prepared to acknowledge. But what should Peter do with his evolved understanding? Should he give up on being a hero because that's the easier way out for himself and the people he cares about? Is it simply self-destructive to be a hero and ultimately a fruitless endeavor? Green Goblin really challenges this when he forces Spider-Man to make a decision between MJ and a cable car full of kids.
Make your choice, Spider-Man, and see how a hero is rewarded.
In the way Peter rejects the ultimatum is resonant with the messaging in the movie. Peter had to save both because he doesn't approach the choice from the perspective of how he gets rewarded. He approaches it from the perspective of how he can do what's best for everyone, and that's what allows him to reject the ultimatum, while a person concerned with the reward would have just given into it.
I have a father. His name was Ben Parker.
By the end of the movie, Peter has come to a deeper understanding of his motivations and the gravity of his choices. His experience has demonstrated to him that no matter how hard he tries to be the hero and pursue what he wants, he's always going to have to make sacrifices, and the people close to him will always have to pay for it. And that's what motivates him to sacrifice a romantic relationship with MJ despite his chance to win her over. She almost died because the Green Goblin knew he loved her. Anyone he cares about is subject to that same risk. So Peter isolates himself. He keeps as much distance as possible to keep the people he cares about safe. He understands what it means to make a greater sacrifice and why that matters in being a hero. Spider-Man can be just as much of a curse as it is a gift, and that's what he grows to understand by the end of the movie. The Green Goblin is a great villain in the movie. He's a total sociopath who is largely a villain for the love of the game. Someone like this should be difficult to understand on a personal level, but the writing does a great job of detailing his ideology so that we can see how it relates to his actions. One of the ways the movie establishes Norman Osborn before he becomes a villain is by demonstrating his lack of morality. He's a great contrast to Uncle Ben because he behaves like the corporate figures that Ben described when he was laid off. Norman prioritizes profit and opportunity over safety and well-being. This is demonstrated when Norman proceeds to downplay safety concerns of his performance enhancers and displays anger when Dr. Strom tries to warn the General of the safety issues. This helps justify his turn to villainy so that it doesn't come out of a vacuum. We have enough character flaws to work with, enough to realize that he wasn't far off from becoming a villain in the first place. He simply didn't have the power to force his desires into fruition, which makes him a great rival to Peter Parker. Norman getting his powers was motivated by greed. He sees his power as an opportunity rather than a responsibility. That's really the driving force behind Norman's beliefs and why it doesn't take much to change him for the worse. While Norman may have seemed like a good person to the people in his circles, that's because Norman feels a level of restraint. He's just one person part of the system. Any wrong move from him can get him snubbed out. He's only playing good for the reward. Once he gets his powers, we learn that his good nature is only a mask of who he is deep down. He doesn't believe in accountability. He believes in whatever uplifts himself, and any compromise to that is beneath him. It's why he withholds the truth about Strom's death as soon as there's an investigation. It's why he conditions his mind to play ignorant so that it's believable every time he does in person.
Downplay the innocent with me. You've known all along.
And while Peter's misfortune became a motivator for him to become better, Norman's misfortune provokes him to become more spiteful and cynical, which motivates him to try to extend his power through cruelty.
I started this company. You know how much I sacrificed?
In this scene, things are different now. Norman doesn't have to restrain himself like he did before, because he's no longer just one part of the system. He has the power to act above it, so he uses the Green Goblin to clean up his messes, in a way that Norman Osborn can't afford to be seen doing. And what's great about how the Green Goblin is portrayed is what it communicates about Norman on a deeper level. His sadistic thoughts, his disdain for morality, and dissatisfaction in putting down the powerless are elements of his character that he can't show unless he's behind a mask. We may see hints of them earlier on, but he can never get away with letting them loose, and the movie makes his ideology more interesting when he confronts Spider-Man, someone who also wears a mask and seemingly has no incentive to hide his true nature.
You and I are not so different.
In trying to prove this, Green Goblin details a cynical outlook on humanity that reflects his own experiences, so that his ideology aligns with his character and explains what he believes is so similar between him and Spider-Man.
And they found you amusing for a while, the people of this city. But the one thing they love more than a hero is to see a hero fail, fall, die trying. In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you. Why bother?
And it only makes sense why Norman would conclude this. Despite Norman seemingly trying to deliver good for the military and America as a whole, the general always wanted Norman to fail. Norman put forth immense work and personal sacrifice to ensure the success of Oscorp, only to be betrayed by his own board. Even his own wife was implied to have used Norman for money, at least from his perspective. So through Norman's experiences, it would only make sense for him to build a cynical worldview on people. Not only does this justify his dismissal of there being a point to morality, but it also gives him the confidence that he can convince Spider-Man to see things the way he does. And if he's successful in doing so, then that only brings a net benefit to the both of them if they teamed up and ruled over people, simply because they can.
And those teeming masses exist for the sole purpose of lifting the few exceptional people onto their shoulders. You, me, we're exceptional.
The movie also does a great job of showing how Spider-Man's resistance ends up making Norman worse, because it reaffirms his perspective based on his prior experiences.
I offered you friendship, and you spat in my face.
While Norman is clearly insane here, his character has been explored enough to justify why he believes this. His narrow view of why he and Spider-Man are similar tells you why he thinks he was offering Spider-Man a gift and why he feels betrayed by his rejection. Someone who seems to be in the unique position that Norman was in still ended up betraying him in his eyes. And learning that this person was Peter Parker, someone he respected and entrusted into his family, causes a severe break in his mind that amplifies his sadistic nature. No longer does he want to bring Spider-Man to his side, or to use their fights to prove his point to Peter. No longer are Norman's motivations solely focused on power and what he can achieve through it, because he doesn't just want to get rid of Spider-Man, he's obsessed with breaking him on a personal level, until even Peter Parker himself wants to die.
Make him suffer. Make him wish he were dead. First, we attack his heart.
That negative progression is explained through Norman's side of the story, and what adds to the personal element of it is when he believes Harry is affected by Peter as well. Once he believes that Peter stole MJ's love from Harry, he now sees what it's like for Harry to experience a feeling of betrayal as well. What's interesting about this is while Norman does realize that he hasn't treated Harry well, which can be seen as a sign of progression, it's for the wrong reasons.
I've lost sight of that somewhere, but I gotta make it up to you, Harry. I'm going to rectify certain inequities.
Norman only changes his attitude towards Harry because he no longer has Peter to rely on, someone he believed would help Harry preserve the Osborn legacy, and his shift in attitude is less of a motivation for him to be a better father, rather it's a motivation to target Spider-Man and demoralize his sense of responsibility. It drives him to make Peter choose between MJ and the kids on the cable car as a way to prove his ideology correct. But what's great about this action scene is how Spider-Man's success ends up disproving Norman's worldview. His perspective is that heroism is foolish because it comes with no inherent reward, and opens the door for betrayal in the long run. But the people who believe in Spider-Man, in spite of the call for his arrest, show otherwise. The reason Spider-Man can save the day is because people who believed in him tried to stop the Green Goblin, and succeeded in throwing him off in some small way, but in a way that mattered enough to save those kids from dying. It's why Norman is shocked by the encounter. He's in pure disbelief as to how Spider-Man managed to win in such a way. It dismantles the perspective that Norman has attached himself to, leaving him no choice but to isolate their fight and to try to enjoy his final moments with Spider-Man. When Spider-Man overpowers him and has him dead to rights, Norman's last resort is to play innocent and use the Goblin identity as a scapegoat. He tries to weaponize Peter's sympathy and connection to Norman because he believes that's a weakness. I think this is a great way to have the villain defeated because it displays how the true weakness lies in Norman's beliefs. He doesn't believe in accountability, so he doesn't want to improve himself. Rather, he wants to advance himself. And because he refused to take accountability and seek help, he ended up getting himself killed. Whereas the value of Peter's beliefs are reaffirmed. He stays loyal to his uncle, and doing so is why he beat the Green Goblin's challenge. The last element of the story I want to talk about is Peter's circle, which consists of Peter, Harry, and MJ. I think the story does a great job of driving the conflict amongst these characters and developing them enough so they feel like distinct people. Harry's introduction with his father shows that they have a more distant relationship. Harry's constantly disappointing his father and doesn't always meet his expectations. Harry is largely motivated by wanting to impress his father, and his friendship with Peter is the reason he could stay in school and exceed his father's expectations. It gives Harry a compelling reason to be friends with Peter, since he knows he can benefit from Peter's knowledge. They also know what it's like to be outsiders compared to everyone else. Peter is mostly interested in science, drawing, and photography, which doesn't seem like enough to make him popular. Harry doesn't like the attention that comes with being the rich guy's son, so he often keeps to himself. It makes for a believable friendship while demonstrating how different Norman and Ben are as father figures. Many of Harry's flaws are picked up on by his father. While Harry benefits from Peter's knowledge, he does so in a way that's a bit slimy and manipulative, like when he repeats scientific facts stated by Peter to make himself look smarter than he really is to MJ. That's a great way to initiate the conflict between Peter and Harry because it feels organic for Harry to make decisions like this. He's influenced by one of the most manipulative businessmen, and Harry would be further motivated to resort to slimy ways of advancing himself to impress his father, especially when Peter starts taking more of his spotlight, even during moments where his father should focus more on his son. It naturally drives Harry's jealousy and motivates his later decisions. The story takes this even further when Harry sees MJ in an emotionally vulnerable state after breaking up with Flash. He mimics his father's opportunistic approach and tries to take advantage of his opportunity. It's slimy, but it doesn't feel like it came out of a vacuum just to drive interpersonal drama. It's based on character traits they've developed so we can understand Harry's mindset. And through his relationship with MJ, we can see how Norman's harmful habits rub onto Harry. Norman sets high expectations for Harry and demeans him when he doesn't meet them. He has a more cold and judgmental approach to parenting, and that contributes to Harry's mindset on how to approach a relationship. He was never shown proper care or what it means to show love to someone, so Harry repeats the same mistakes his father did, which makes MJ uncomfortable with telling him about her job. It shouldn't be a big deal to say to your partner, but Harry is the type to make it a big deal. This is also shown when he tries to dictate what MJ should wear, solely based on what would impress his father. And we see more of Harry's manipulative habits developing by the mere way Peter discovers his relationship with MJ. Harry didn't tell him about it. Peter had to find out through MJ.
Well, sorry, Harry hasn't mentioned her.
It's clear that Harry didn't figure out a way to tell Peter without making his approach come off as slimy. That's why he didn't really have a good excuse to Peter for not telling him.
You should know I'm crazy about her. It's just, you never made a move.
And when he gets questioned on this by Peter and Norman, he changes the subject to getting Peter a job. He knows Norman has great respect for Peter and would be thrown off by the opportunity to find him a job, and Peter is actively searching for one and would focus on Norman's opportunity. He's using money as a way to throw off Peter so he doesn't have to be upfront with him. We also see him try to use his wealth later to try making MJ feel better, which is a shallow and narrow-minded approach to helping someone emotionally distressed by an event.
We'll go and have breakfast, and I want to buy you something. Because I want to, it'll make you feel better.
Clearly, Harry doesn't know how to simply listen and show support. Instead, he's deciding what will make MJ feel better, as if he knows best. It very much reflects Norman's controlling tendencies, and likely reflects how he reacts whenever Harry was in emotional distress. It justifies why the relationship with MJ isn't going to last, and validates MJ's reasoning to reject him. And because Harry has no reason to change, he remains stubborn in his beliefs and habits. He becomes overly defensive of his father when MJ is hurt by his words, instead of trying to support her as he should in that situation. He starts to believe in his father's cynical view when he gets rejected for this, because that seemingly validates what Norman had to say about betrayal and loyalty.
Oh, you're right about MJ. You're right about everything.
And this does a good job of setting up why Harry would double down on his poor habits and continue to form cynical beliefs when his father dies. Sure, he values Peter as a person, knowing he's the only family he has left, but losing his father would only drive more sympathy from Harry. It's harder to be critical of someone you care about, especially when they die. The story as a whole justifies why Harry became worse over time and how he comes closer to reflecting the worst aspects of his father, whereas Peter comes closer to reflecting the strongest ideals his uncle believed in. MJ is given a strong character arc throughout the movie, largely because of how Peter helps her develop. She starts off afraid to be her true self, knowing that she has been ridiculed by her parents for doing so. Her abusive household justifies her insecurities and why she's afraid of being upfront with people, and some of her later relationships play into this. But what's great about her interactions with Peter is that the more they interact, the more they prove that she doesn't have to live this way. There are people out there who aren't simply going to judge her, and will instead encourage her to be the best version of herself.
Some dream, huh?
That's nothing to be embarrassed about. That's not low. You have a job. You know, Harry doesn't live on a little place I like to call Earth.
Peter is a direct challenge to her insecurities because he doesn't simply pass judgment or try to control her life. He simply listens and shows that he values what she feels, and that's why she ultimately believes Peter is the best person for her to be with, so much that she chooses Peter over Spider-Man. Sure, Spider-Man's cool and all, but in her eyes, it's hard to come by someone like Peter, who truly validates her as a person.
There's only one man who's always been there for me, who makes me feel like I'm more than I ever thought I could be, that I'm just me. And that's okay.
And while MJ has grown past her insecurities throughout the story, the ending where Peter decides to not have a romantic relationship with her definitely brings interesting potential for the future, to see how this affects her ability to trust people and her understanding of Peter. I think this is all generally well done, though to offer some criticism towards the writing, I do think the story would have benefited from critiquing MJ's choice to kiss Spider-Man, where she's basically cheating on Harry. Now I don't think this is out of character given the implications of Harry's actions that I've gone over. I can see why MJ wouldn't feel inclined to be as loyal to Harry, but the movie doesn't really critique Peter and MJ for doing this behind Harry's back, and doing so would have strengthened the development for both of their characters and avoids glossing over the moral issue here. In fact, it seems to romanticize it. But besides that, I think MJ's story is done very well overall and made for an effective arc for her character. That covers my general thoughts on Spider-Man. It's a great movie, one of the better Spider-Man movies out there. Next I'll be covering Spider-Man 2, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all for watching, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you all later. Goodbye.